You see, problems you usually solve when they pop up, and then maybe you can prioritize a bit which ones need your attention, which ones can wait, but your improvement efforts, and of course also the resources that go into that, it's better to plan it. And in this video, we'll talk about how you do this planning of your improvement activities. Hello, I'm Tom. Welcome to my channel where we talk about continuous improvement in an industrial setting. And this video, it's a bit different from most of my other videos in that we will not be going into the actual solving of the problems or the actual statistics of Six Sigma. This is about how do you analyze your business and how do you set up your loss analysis, but then also the planning of what to improve and what to expect for next year coming out of that. Now, I think especially around now, right? It's August when I video this. August, September is a brilliant time to do your budgeting cycle. Many companies use that. Of course, also many companies use somewhere January-ish, but it is a good time to take stock of what happened in the last year, but also especially what are we going to do next year. And this is well, actually, I would say the only time, so when you are making your budget, that is the best time to also be looking into, so what are we going to improve? Which KPIs are we going to improve? That has a financial effect. That's why it goes into the budget cycle. But also you want to know the operational side of those KPIs. What are we going to do? Are certain lines going to have a higher OEE, and how? Are we going to reduce material waste and where? So those things, they are a very important input into explaining what your performance is going to be next year. Also, you see, problems you solve when they pop up. And basically the idea of problems is that you have a good stable process, a nice production line, everything is just flowing as it should be, and then suddenly things go wrong. And that usually means you have a nice root cause to solve, but that also means that at that moment you have to act. Now you can choose to just reform, so to say, really get back to standard, so reset your process and just hope that it is fixed by that. And actually, if that works, it's quite a good first method, but then you basically sort of ignore the problem, or you put in the resources, the effort to analyze that problem, solve it, do it in a good way. I've got videos on that as well. It will not be this video, but you take your action and also your priority decisions at the moment that the problem pops up. Now, for improvement or for very long-term problems, so those things that, well, you may label them as a problem, but actually it is more of a bad situation that has been in your business already for a long time, and it's one of those problem areas you want to solve. This is, to me, more in the improvement side of continuous improvement, because you plan to improve an operational standard. So you might be ashamed to call a certain bad process your operational standard, but if you have been running like that for a year or more, that is your standard, like it or not. And improvement is about picking which of the standards you are going to investigate, attack, improve, and really bring to the next level to increase your performance. Now, the first thing that you really want to do is to get a good overview of your whole business, and you do that from the data. And the data analysis that you do, that is, you're going to take your whole factory and you're going to check, where does my money go, basically. So make sure that you cover your whole P&L part of, at least of operations, or the part that you are interested in organization-wise, and try to get it complete. So just say, this is the amount of money that we spent on making our products last year. It has a big part of materials, then it has some material loss. Maybe you register it separately, maybe it's just in materials. This was our labor cost, this was our energy cost, our maintenance spend. This is 100%, and now we're going to see what part of that can we actually allocate. So make sure you've got your full P&L, and also at least allocate and get the numbers from your full P&L. The interesting part, of course, only comes in when you're going to reference that, or actually sort of check and compare that to your zero loss base. And we have, of course, also on this channel been talking about zero loss. So the idea here is that what really needs to go into your product, material-wise, and into the production process, labor and energy-wise, and the rest that comes with it. And here, very important, you will hopefully, you will hopefully have a lot of losses. That means you have a lot to improve as well. But as soon as you have very limited losses as compared to a real zero-based system, then I don't really believe the analysis anymore, because practice is that, many of us have pretty significant loss level, right? Really tens of percentages of loss if you compare it to zero loss. That does not mean that you can solve all of that. That is a different thing, but be very direct on this. So if we are making a car that has a lot of metal going into it, it's sort of, and okay, this is very simple, but it's sort of weighing the car, and that is your amount of metal that goes into it. Everything more than that you purchased is a loss. Now, of course, you will do this much more detailed, right? You know how much metal you put into the car body itself. You know how many engines you put in, which is one usually. The number of tires, the number of bolts, and all of that is usually in your bill of materials. So in your enterprise resource planning, your SAP, your Oracle, or comparable systems, you will probably have a nice bill of material, a BOM, or even better, a multi-level BOM that will show you also all of the work in process, how much goes into it. But in the end, one car requires this whole list of ingredients without any waste already figured in. That is something that most resource planning programs take into account. On average, we lose about 2% of all our screws, which is very good, right, for budgeting purposes to put into your resource planning, because that means that you order on time, that you have a good cost price, things like that. But here we want to know the zero loss level. And then we compare that to what did we actually use. And we're going to do this with a number of categories. And I have separate videos on most of those categories, so it's good to check those out. But to get a bit of an idea what we are doing, so we've basically got our different departments in our operations, and materials, labor, energy, maintenance department, whatever you want to put in here, you can split it up a bit. A quite common way of splitting labor up is into direct and indirect, and management, so overhead type of labor. It's a very good thing to do. Materials, you might want to split it up as well a bit in your main sort of raw material and auxiliary materials, the helper stuff everywhere. Maybe you want to split up energy. You might want to add maintenance. I think it's usually a good thing if you can add quality costs. So you have a number of categories and the departments, and purely based on the data. And that's why I said, this data is probably in your electronic systems, maybe even in one system. SAP could handle all of this if you really have it completely built out. But in general, what I see is that part of it is in Excel documents, part of it is in SAP Oracle, part of it is in a specific program or software or web software package that you have for that. But you have most of the data on this. And what I really want to advise you is you start with a data analysis. And if you're going to do this, once a year, then the data analysis is 2 to 3 days, maybe a week, right? 2, 3, maybe 5 days. You can call it something like, the loss week or the data phase, or you get mainly your management and controlling, so your financial controlling, industrial controlling department, you get them involved, you dig up the data, you make a good overview. And of course, the more of this loss analysis, this loss deployment you do during the year, the easier this will be to do that one time that you make a full overview, right? But what you do is you're going to check, where do we lose the material? Now, of course, on material, and this is compared to zero loss, so the material actually going into your product, so coming out of the process. Say we're making cheeses like I used to do for years. To get yourself a 10 kilo cheese, you need about 100 liters of milk. Then that 100 liters is not even in this picture at all. These are just costs that you need to make zero based. But if you used 120 liters of milk to get a 10 kilo cheese, then those 20 extra liters, they go here. And that part, that you can split up. And you're going to try to split it up as much as possible to where did we actually lose it? Did we lose it at the raw materials department, in production? Did we lose it somewhere in the post-processing that they just throw out stuff? So where did we make the bigger losses? And then the same you have also with labor and energy, although here you will usually not be working with zero level as much, because it's not really possible to say what is the zero level for labor or for energy, because it is not zero. There is value added labor and value added energy in your process. So here you will usually be working with something like best in class, or a very structured way of saying, well, this is what we really need. So one person needs to be running this line, and we need to do that 200 days a year. But then, and you multiply it with your OEE and say, well, if apparently 50% of the time we're not doing anything, at least 50% of your labor cost already goes in here. If you have someone walking around, to fill in breaks, or to teach your personnel, needed, but not really value added, because those were the breaks, those were the teaching moments, those were the administration, whatever. So check out the videos on labor cost and on OEE and on OLE. You also get where did we lose the most labor. So for labor, you could put in the total spend, but it would be a lot better if you can narrow it down to at least combine it with the OEE in different departments. How effectively do we use our labor pool? The same for energy versus best in class versus industry comparison data versus a specialist assessment. Such things are available in most industries. Where did we lose a lot? Now, when you get this grid sort of up and running, then you have a discussion on what to do next and where to really check for improvement opportunities. And there are basically three things to really look out for. So that's why you need a bit more data than this. But one of them is, what has a high loss? So which of these categories? Here we see that the material is slightly bigger than energy and a bit more seriously bigger than labor, but they are roughly the same order of magnitude. So that doesn't give us a lot, but sometimes you really see that you have huge material losses and almost no labor losses. Then you know for sure that you want a materials deep dive, because that will be the next phase. But what you also see is that Department 2 has huge material losses, the other ones not so much. That gives us a couple of things to check. So maybe check materials specifically, but as they are roughly the same here, maybe not, but definitely check out material losses in Department 2. And also this Department 3 seems to be quite a big loss leader over multiple categories, and especially in the inefficiency with labor and energy. Now, maybe that is inherent to the process. But there is also a big chance that you will be able to make good improvements and good savings there. So that's not really a topic, that is a whole department that you want to really take a closer look at. The last thing I told you, so these are already sort of free, but we now checked and the category and the area. The last one that is very, very important to check, so it can really help you to find improvement opportunities, and that is to compare this to last year. So trending, if we see a lot of variation within the months, if we see an upgoing or a downgoing trend, but if we see especially an upgoing trend in waste, and you can also do that by just comparing it to last year and make the comparison, volume corrected if that is a thing for this type of waste. But check, do we suddenly have a lot more? Because maybe already for the last 30 years, you just know that materials, they are sorted out in your Department 2, your production department, and that's where the waste is, and you've been looking into it a lot, then maybe it will not become such a big topic for the next phase. But if this used to be 10 and now it's 20, then you know for sure that is something we want to look into. The same actually goes for the maybe lower numbers. If suddenly you see $5 million of materials going away in Department 1, you didn't really have serious losses there before at all, dive into that. Because of course something has changed and that is usually the easiest to correct. But then what do you do once you know where to focus? You dive into those losses. So you do a deep dive, as we like to say in sort of consultant industry, but you do a deep dive on specific parts of this. And the idea is that you do not now again pick your whole factory with all the losses. You have prioritized with your data analysis which areas you are going to focus on. And based on this, you are probably not going to involve people from departments 1 and 2 in your deep dive, except for those that know a lot about the material at department 2. And you are going to involve people from department 3 and specialists who know that department and who know how the labor and energy structure of that department is organized, but also how the management of the department is organized, because maybe by just improving things over the whole line of that department, getting the whole planning and execution and checking up and the way we do things in that department in line, that might give you a big breakthrough. Now, to check those things, to check what really are those losses, so here in the data analysis phase, we were mainly checking where are the losses, how big are they, what do we see versus zero loss, and we were not focused yet on, but what is it actually? So how does it happen? Probably, especially if it's material losses, we will know where these defects or offcuts or whatever material reason you have to scrap it, but you probably do not know the causes of why you were making this specific type of waste. That is something you want to dive deeper into, and you do that. So the data analysis phase, take a bit sort of a higher level, take your factory management and a couple of more office specialists like the controlling department, like CI specialists. In the deep dive, make sure you involve operators, team leaders, the type of specialist from the shop floor, because they will tell you what is really happening, and you also really go to the shop floor. The data phase you should be able to do in the office. The deep dive you need to go into the factory. And now I sort of already hear some of you say, you can never do an analysis from the office without going to the Gemba. For the data analysis, yes, you can. Of course, if you see very strange things, go down there, do a quick check. But this is just phase 1. In the deep dive, you are completely right. You need to check what is happening. So you do the deep dive only on a couple of things, and you make sure that you understand what is happening and that you get ideas on how to solve those problems, how to improve those processes, and at least in order of magnitude of how much can we save with that effort and what will it roughly cost. So you get a bit of an idea, is this a CapEx investment type of improvement, or is it just work with Six Sigma and Lean and our improvement tools, but we need people for that, it's also a cost. So what is roughly the cost? What do we expect in operational KPI, and what does that mean for the financial side? When we have done the whole data thing and then dove a bit deeper into it, you will know this correlation, right? You will know that 3% points of OEE are going to yield you 250,000 euros a year on this line, something like that, because it comes from your financial controller's data input already. So that will give you a good idea, what possibilities do I have to improve within my organization? Now, hopefully you'll have a lot more than you can do within a year. That would be nice, because then you have something to pick from, and then you're going to prioritize them in the third step. So you make your improvement plan or your roadmap or your budget plan or your Hoshinkanri, but you make your improvement deployment, you plan what you are going to do and how much resources you are going to spend on that in the next time period. And in this example, year, but I also think year is pretty fitting for most industrial organizations to do this process. And here, with all this input, you can now prioritize. You can also say, we are not going to do all of those wonderful plans that we had. We're going to do the top plans. We're going to check also if we're going to say, yeah, we need a lot of material teams and material things. Let's do 5 material loss eradication teams in the first quarter of next year. You will immediately feel, oh, wait a minute, we've got only 1 technologist and maybe 1 secondary specialist who can really support such teams. We do not have the resources for that. Now, you can fly in more resources, but the normal way to solve this is to spread it out. You say, okay, each quarter we're going to pick one material topic because this specialist will have basically so much time to work on improvements. So you're going to spread out your resources, plan them over the next year. And the same, of course, goes also for you really want to choose. Are we going to do a focused effort with multiple improvement initiatives on one department? It has advantages as well. So the obvious disadvantage is that you'll be overloading that department. You will be drawing a lot of resources from that department into improvement work, and this costs time. So it's changes on the floor that costs time for your operators and other people who need to get those changes into their system at the end of improvement projects. But also you want people from that part of the shop floor to help in the improvement teams because they have the knowledge. So it drains a lot of resources. As I said, there is also definitely an advantage, and that is that like this, you focus on a part of the organization, and that can actually make a very strong momentum of total change for that whole part of the organization. That also creates synergy in how you improve, the material and the energy usage, and at the same time really look at how are we going to do that with the labor, and how is this actually all put into standard operating procedures, and you basically take everything into account in one big run. But that is a choice that you want to make with management, definitely with the management of that department, but also with the wider management. The quality or technology manager is definitely going to have to say something about that. Your production manager, your engineer, maybe also quality. So you have a number of specialists that really need to be specialist managers, really need to be involved in this, but also from finance, also from general management. This is the type of discussion that you want to have. And that is also the reason why we set it up like this, because next to having a nice overview after the data analysis, you get a lot of buy-in from the managers that participate in it. You already prime everyone. Look, these are going to be our main target areas. People have seen the data. You also make sure that everyone in the end has the same data as a starting point. Then you do the deep dive, already having a mandate from management to really go into that. In the deep dive, you specifically, of course, involve the managers of those areas where you're really going to look. And then afterwards, you make this plan. You already had buy-in of several levels, and then you combine it into a resource picture that fits with what they already expect. So this trio, first have a data analysis, then deep dive on specific areas, then make your plan that you put resources on. And so this is a great way to get the roadmap, your improvement project planning for next year, for the next periods, up and running from data with a confirmation of what you found, with ideas of what you can improve, and have it all with the buy-in and also the commitment of resources. So that is a system I really advise you to use, especially in the budgeting period. Now, if you want to put some relative time periods on it, I would say this is about, if you do the long version, this is about a week. Then this is 2 weeks with maybe the last 1 or 2 days already making the plan, but especially in maximum 2-3 weeks after you finish the deep dive. And these are full time for the team involved. But then, in about 4 to 8 sessions with management, it depends a bit on how tight your resource planning is, you finish the planning. So 2 sessions with the people involved in this deep dive to really prepare, almost no management involved yet, and then 2-4 maybe sessions, especially with the management team, the people who have the resources to put those teams into place. But this will take about twice as long as that. And I think you cannot really do this in 1 and 2 days, but you can do it in half a week and a full week, or a full week and 2 weeks, and have a plan for 1 year, maybe up to 3 years. But if you're making a 3 or 5 year plan, be ready to update that same plan every year. So this, I would say, especially now in this period that many companies are going into their budgeting cycle for next year, try to get this up and running. You know that when you have you don't really need management to be in here full time. If you have your continuous improvement department and you're controlling, then most of the resources that you really need are going to be in there. Get this hype and make it into a thing you do with your organization. So that's also why, a loss week, a deep dive week, and we're going to do the plan in a management strategy meeting or 2 or 3 over one day. If you really put it into a block like that, instead of doing a little bit every month, then you are going to get the resources to make this plan, and you're going to have something to show for at the end, which is a really good foundation for your budget that you can really show. These are the operational things we're going to do next year. These are the resources that we need for it, and this is the effect that we're expecting to gain from it. Really, many companies would greatly benefit from this process. Now, I do also have a question for you before I leave you, and that is, this topic is a bit different from what I usually do on the channel, and actually I could not find any of this on YouTube at the moment. So either it's not being covered, but there is demand for it, or there's also not really demand. So let me know, please write me a comment on this video. Is this an interesting topic for you? Is this something you come to YouTube to search for? And is it useful for me to make a video for you about this? Or do you really just want to go back to, the tools to solve problems, the tools to improve process? Because that, of course, I can also do, and I love doing it. But I think that this is quite useful and right now underrepresented on our learning platforms like your Google and many blogs, websites, and YouTube. So let me know in the comments below, please. And then I hope that you enjoyed this video. Give it a like if you did, and as I said, comment on what you thought about the video. For now, I wish you the best of luck planning your improvements, and as always, enjoy the improvement journey.